The hell are you supposed to be?
What do we eat?
I am better than you.
Why aren't you dead? I'm vengeance.
Picture this. Robert Pattinson receiving $1 billion studio's copy of Stephenie Meyer's own novel, with every single smile circled in a different color. Their biggest star was making Edward Cullen too depressing, and someone in a boardroom decided a color-coded book would fix that. The message was clear. Smile more, be less strange, fall in line. You are the golden goose, and golden geese are supposed to act like it. Pattinson read that novel, grabbed a different color, highlighted every single frown, and sent it straight back. Most people, handed a $67 million career and told to simply stop being difficult, would stop being difficult, grin their way to a Malibu beach house, and never look back. Pattinson walked away from all of it, and not because the money dried up or the offers stopped. He did it on purpose. And this is the story of the most deliberate career reinvention in Hollywood history. Before the story even starts, drop a comment with one name, the actor you think pulled off the biggest career reinvention in Hollywood history. Before the vampire franchise and the fainting crowds, there was a kid named Claudia, which is what Pattinson's older sisters called him.
When you were a kid, your sisters would dress you up as a little girl named Claudia. Are you the one that came up with her name? Claudia?
No, of course not.
Your sisters.
Yeah, because I look like Claudia Schiffer.
For 12 years, Victoria and Lizzie Pattinson dressed their little brother in dresses, heels, and full makeup, parading him around like a doll they had personally commissioned. And he was shy enough to let them do it without pushing back. Something was quietly building underneath, because the same kid got himself expelled at 12 for shoplifting an entire rack of adult magazines from a newsagent and running a distribution ring among his classmates, essentially operating a tiny and inadvisable media company. Drama Club fared no better. His teacher told him flatly he had no talent for the creative arts and advised him to stop wasting his time with it altogether. Pattinson ignored all of it, spent his teens performing guitar sets at London pubs under the alias Bobby Dupay, a name borrowed from Jack Nicholson's restless anti-hero in 5 Easy Pieces, which tells you something about a teenager already choosing his own mythology before anyone else had a chance to choose one for him. Then came Mira Nair's film Vanity Fair, a real role with a real red carpet, and Pattinson showed up full of quiet hope, only to discover, sitting in the theater, that every single one of his scenes had been cut without anyone bothering to tell him. Invisible at his own debut. The casting director felt so guilty about it that she called in a favor, which turned out to be Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Pattinson landed the role of Cedric Diggory, noble and handsome, and written by the story to die on camera in front of everyone. What nobody expected was what came next. A generation of Potter fans watched this unknown, angular British kid make that death scene matter, and they followed him when he moved on. The pipeline from Hogwarts to Forks switched on, and a studio noticed. He had gone from deleted scenes to an unmissable face, and the machine was ready to put him to work. The Twilight audition was not a sophisticated affair. Pattinson was sleeping on his agent's couch in Los Angeles.
Twilight audition. I used to live on my agent's couch at the time.
Broke and essentially a nobody, when his agent sent an email the morning of the audition telling him to find a Valium in the bathroom cabinet.
Find a Valium in my bathroom. I'd never taken a Valium before.
He had never taken one before, but he found it, took it, caught a cab, and arrived at director Catherine Hardwicke's house feeling, in his own words,
I just remember just feeling so glorious in the back of the taxi with the window open and just being like, wow, this is what I've been missing.
Spacey and detached and oddly still. Hardwicke looked at him and thought,
That's Edward Cullen.
The studio disagreed, told her he was not good-looking enough for the role, and she had to promise she could fix him. Better hair, real training, better posture. She fought for his cheekbones in an actual meeting, and his cheekbones won. And from that moment, he was locked into the franchise alongside Kristen Stewart, not for one film, but for 5. Signing on meant becoming a product. The press tours, the magazine covers, the paparazzi in 6 cars following you home at midnight. The first film paid him $2 million, and he hated every second of the character. Pattinson called the source material, publicly, and while still actively promoting it, this woman's sexual fantasy. He told the press he was convinced she is mad and in love with her own fictional creation, and told MoviePhone he would mindlessly hate the films if he were not in them. The money escalated regardless. New Moon brought $12 million, Eclipse another 12, and Breaking Dawn came in at an estimated $41 million per film. Every sequel made walking away more financially irrational, and every color-coded smile made it more personally necessary. He walked out of his own premiere halfway through because he could not finish watching himself on screen. Between the Twilight films, he tried conventional transition projects like Remember Me and Water for Elephants, but they failed to break him out of the vampire's shadow. The machine wanted him locked in place. And while the studio was busy color-coding his smiles and Twilight was still pulling in audiences, he was already on his way out, quietly filming a $2 million indie movie no one saw coming. By 2009, Twilight had made $300 million. And while that machine kept running, Pattinson was already on a Spanish film set playing Salvador Dali in a queer indie film called Little Ashes. The film explored the rumored romantic relationship between the young Dali and the poet Federico Garcia Lorca. And one particular scene required a moment of sexual self-gratification on camera. Pattinson decided that faking it would not produce the right result, and his exact words on the matter were, "So I pleasured myself in front of the camera. My orgasm face is recorded for eternity." The face of a $3 billion romance franchise, choosing to spend his spare time doing exactly that. What drew him to the role ran deeper than the part itself. Dali had built his public persona like a stage costume, performing eccentric genius for the world while keeping his real self completely locked away, a mask he designed and controlled. That was nothing like the Edward Cullen character, a persona that studio executives had handed to Pattinson and that he hated every second of. And he was running the same play in real life. Pattinson had developed what he later described as a fugue state in interviews, a kind of impulse that pushed him towards saying something shocking whenever a camera pointed at him. On live television with Matt Lauer, he claimed he once watched a clown die in a tiny exploding car as a child.
How did the clown die?
His little car exploded. The joke car exploded on it.
On Jimmy Kimmel, he insisted he was a professional women's hand model, right up until his own mother, sitting in the studio audience, denied it on camera in real time.
Claimed that you did hand modeling as a kid, and your mom happened to be here with you that night, and I checked with her, and she said, not true.
During a GQ interview over FaceTime in lockdown, he attempted to invent a handheld pasta dish involving sugar, tinfoil, and a microwave, and the microwave exploded. A film journalist described what was actually happening. He was not lying for fun, he was lying for protection. If the world cannot pin you down, they cannot own you. The persona served as a shield, and behind it, he was about to make the most financially irrational career decision in modern Hollywood. The man who just destroyed his kitchen making pasta was about to destroy his entire paycheck as well. and he was going to do it deliberately. David Cronenberg had been developing Cosmopolis for years, a film shot almost entirely inside a limousine, adapted from Don DeLillo's novel about a billionaire watching his empire dissolve in Manhattan traffic. His first choice was Colin Farrell, but scheduling conflicts forced Farrell to drop out, and the call went to Pattinson. His initial answer was no. Pattinson told people that Cronenberg was one of his heroes, that he was, using his own word, a pussy, and that he simply was not a good enough actor to be in this man's film.
I could tell that he knew it was good, and that he wanted to do it, but that he was afraid of it.
Cronenberg had no patience for any of that. "You are creating a new thing," he told Pattinson, "an original thing. You have to forget all that other stuff."
But in Rob's case, no, he was absolutely I had no doubt that he was the right guy. And in talking to him, I was even more convinced. And it really just a question of us understanding that we knew what we were both getting into.
And then came the line that started appearing everywhere. If Rob were a violin, he'd be a Stradivarius. Pattinson said yes, and then he worked out what that yes actually cost him.
Yeah, stockpiling of dead rats called global health menace.
His estimated Breaking Dawn paycheck stood at $41 million, while Cosmopolis had a total production budget of $20 million, and he earned a fraction of that. The film pulled in $7 million worldwide, and the industry trades wrote his post-Twilight career an obituary before the ink had dried. What nobody expected was the critical reception elsewhere. Cahiers du Cinéma, the most respected film journal on Earth, named Cosmopolis the second best film of that year, and Sight and Sound placed it in their top 10. Commercially, it had failed, but he had landed exactly where he needed to land. Pattinson described his thinking plainly. "I think as soon as you feel validated, you're a bad actor. You need to constantly feel like there's a 99% chance of failure." The trades called Cosmopolis a flop, and he called it the movie of his life. 3 years after that, he sent an email to 2 directors in New York, having seen exactly 1 photograph from their entire body of work, and asked, with the kind of desperation that had nothing to do with money, to be let in. It was the strangest job application in Hollywood history, and somehow, it worked. Josh and Benny Safdie were developing Good Time, a raw crime film set in the backstreets of Queens, when they received an unsolicited email from Robert Pattinson, triggered by a single production still from their previous film that had caught his eye. The email read, "I want to be a part of whatever that is." The Safdies replied asking if he had seen any of their work, and his answer was 3 words. "Nope, don't need to. I know." A man who could have called any director in Hollywood was cold emailing 2 unknowns to ask for a seat at the table. Preparing for Connie Nikas, a jittery, cornered Queens criminal, meant moving into a Harlem basement, keeping the curtains shut for 2 months, never changing the sheets, and eating canned tuna with hot sauce every day, supplemented, for reasons science has not fully explained, by Nespresso capsules. Pattinson joked later about mercury poisoning. His neighbor concluded he was a freak, and the Safdies put him through a real 1-hour psychiatric evaluation in character to test how Connie Nikas would hold up under genuine psychological pressure. His struggle was not a commercial one. He was after something deeper.
I think you're better than me.
I am better than you.
Good Time premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in 2017 to a 6-minute standing ovation, and The Hollywood Reporter compared Pattinson to Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon. A24 distributed the film, cementing Pattinson's position in the prestige indie ecosystem. Around the same time, he was working with Claire Denis on High Life, a sci-fi art film that pushed him even further into uncompromising territory. And that is when Robert Eggers entered the picture. Eggers had originally approached Pattinson about something more conventional, but Pattinson turned it down and told him he was only interested in doing weird things. So Eggers sent over the Lighthouse script as a kind of test. Find this weird enough, or they would never work together. The shoot took place on the Nova Scotia coast in dead of winter. Black and white photography, punishing conditions every single day. Pattinson drank real alcohol for the drunk scenes, ate mud from puddles, put a rock in his shoe so he would walk with authentic discomfort, punched himself before takes, and at some point, urinated in his costume because discomfort was the instrument. After 5 consecutive fire hose takes in freezing water, he came within inches of physically striking Eggers.
That's what you are? You're a goddamn drunken, horse-shitting, short shit liar. A liar!
The moment that captures everything happened mid-shoot. Pattinson was gagging himself during a scene while Willem Dafoe had an arm around him, and Dafoe caught Eggers' eye across the set and communicated one silent, urgent message. If this man vomits on me, I am leaving. Eggers called cut. Pattinson found out about this later and had absolutely no idea it was happening because he had gone so far into the character's physical collapse that a genuine crisis occurring 3 feet away simply did not register. The only way for Robert to approach a scene is to jump in the water and drown. Robbie Collin of The Telegraph compared the Lighthouse performance to Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood. Not impressive given his background, not surprisingly strong for a former teen idol, but a straight-up Daniel Day-Lewis comparison. After The Lighthouse, whether Pattinson could act was a settled question. What remained was a different one. What happens when the world's most interesting directors find out he is available? The answer came with a cape, a cowl, and 7,000 very unhappy fans. When Warner Brothers announced Robert Pattinson as the new Batman, the internet responded with the measured proportionality for which it is widely known. A Change.org petition, titled "Don't Cast Robert Pattinson as Batman," gathered 7,000 signatures within hours, and the argument distilled down to one point. Not the Twilight guy, we have been through enough. What many didn't realize was that Christopher Nolan had already cast Pattinson in Tenet in 2020, recognizing his transformation long before the Batman announcement. Pattinson was characteristically unbothered by all of it. "It was less aggressive than when I got Twilight," he told reporters. "Back then, nobody even knew who I was. That was off one photo, and people were like, absolutely not. That was way more painful." The people who were excited knew his post-Twilight work. The people who weren't excited didn't know his post-Twilight work. Reeves had drafted the first act of the film while listening to Nirvana's Something in the Way, envisioning Bruce Wayne as a reclusive, decaying figure. Built closer to Kurt Cobain than any billionaire socialite. A man whose public face is a performance and whose real self stays buried underneath. A decade of playing broken men in the dark turned out to be the perfect preparation for that version of Bruce Wayne. The Batman made $770 million worldwide, landed at 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics reached for the word revelation. His performance earned him Independent Spirit Award nominations, validating his indie credentials alongside blockbuster success. And that is when Bong Joon-ho called. The Oscar-winning director of Parasite wanted Pattinson for Mickey 17, and his casting rationale was specific.
And, you know, I saw him in The King with that weird French accent, and I'm screaming at Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. I knew that he could portray this madness and charisma.
For the dual characters in Mickey 17, Pattinson based his 2 performances on Ren and Stimpy, and Bong said he surprised me every day on set. He used the Dior checks to fund the Claire Denis projects. He used the Twilight fame to secure the Safdie budgets. Currently, he is filming Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and he plays Antinous, the villain. Of course he does. There's one thing the standard redemption arc leaves out. Robert Pattinson was never actually broke. The Dior ambassador contract payouts kept arriving throughout the wilderness years. The Twilight royalties never stopped, and he was never choosing between rent and artistic integrity.
Giant balls. Giant balls with a tiny cock.
He was choosing between $67 million and 20, which changes the calculation, at least somewhat. But a safety net cannot protect you from one specific thing: a decade of being publicly wrong, publicly overlooked, and publicly failing in front of everyone when you had absolutely no obligation to do any of it. That is the real question buried in this story, and it has nothing to do with Pattinson specifically. What are you willing to be bad at in public, and for how long, before you become the person you are actually trying to become? He answered it himself. I want to be the kind of actor who crashes. If this one landed for you, share it with someone who still thinks Robert Pattinson is just the Twilight guy. Consider it a public service. And if you want more of this, the deep dives and the stories Hollywood does not tell cleanly, subscribe. We will be back next week with another one.